much for joining. We're starting a little behind today. Hi, Michelle.
Hey Danielle, how are you?
I am well. I am just going with the motions of life. Client call ran over, so thanks so much to
Great.
you and Instagram for your patience.
I was like, what's going on?
But that's the beauty of Instagram Lives, right?
Indeed.
Is that you never quite know what will happen. But I am really excited to chat with you, and I'm just gonna pin this here. Um, but yeah, thank you so much for joining.
No
For
problem.
those of you who don't know me, my name is Danielle Johnson. I'm the former junior board president for 3.5 Acres Yoga, and I'm joined today by Michelle, one of our 3.5 Acres Yoga facilitators, as well as just a strong participant to the new Happy New Year. Ah, that's so nice. Strong participant to the 3.5 Acres community.
Mhm.
Would love to just kick this off, Michelle, by you introducing yourself because you would do a better job than I would.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Danielle. My name is Michelle Lehrman, and I am a yoga and spin instructor in New York City. I teach at a few different spaces. I teach at Crunch. I teach at a wonderful yoga studio in Queens called Sacred Space Astoria. And actually, during the pandemic, I started teaching outdoor classes locally, which I still do when it's nice out. And then there's a local gym called Lionheart Health that lets me host my yoga classes there when it's too cold out. But I am a graduate of the 3.5 Acres Trauma Informed Yoga Teacher Training. I did it in June in 2022, I think, and found it to be extremely beneficial to me.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us today. We know that 3.5 Acres Yoga works to bring yoga to underserved communities.
Mm-hmm.
And you were joining our conversation today to just share a bit about teacher trainings and the importance of
Yes.
them. As someone who I also am a graduate of the THE training from
Mm-hmm.
2020. It's hard. Time is moving so weird that I think 2020 to 2023, it's like, wait, what year was it?
It
It's just
was
one
what
year.
it's not even like a year. It's just sort of like a blob of time,
Yes.
I
Yes, that's
think.
exactly exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And so like all the things that you have accomplished, can you share more about, I guess before we dive into the teacher training bit,
Yeah.
your journey into being a spin instructor and a yoga
I
instructor?
know
Was it
it's a
coinciding at
weird
different
combo.
times?
It's a weird combo. I did my yoga teacher training first.
Okay.
That was in 2016. And I had been like an avid spinner as well. Like I always took those classes. And then Crunch is wonderful because they want you to expand your skill set. So we had an opportunity to, or I had an opportunity to take a Schwinn training. So I did. And now I teach yoga and spin, which again, it's like an odd combo, but I actually teach both of them on Saturday mornings, and it's great. I teach a spin class and then a yoga class. It keeps me active and balanced. Um, yeah.
I was gonna say, so Schwinn, was that the name of the That's a bike, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Schwinn
yeah,
bike.
yeah. It
Okay,
is.
yeah.
It is a bike, and they have you can get your training through them as well.
Oh,
There's
that's
also a
so
few. I
cool.
also have a certification in the stages cycling as well. There's a few different kinds that you can take.
Oh,
So
that's so
the
cool.
stages bikes are great. I love them.
And I don't think, as someone who also does spin classes primarily through Peloton, I
Mhm.
wasn't aware that there were different types of spin classes.
Yeah, I mean, there's different types of training. I think that the
Okay.
classes that you take, I have a Peloton as well. I got one during lockdown because I was like, I need to keep my stamina up somehow. And actually, it ended up being a really helpful tool because when we first went back into the studios, we had to be completely masked,
Oh,
teachers and
wow.
the students. So I would run my playlists full out on my bike with a mask on
Wow.
to make sure that like to learn how to, plan a class just for that added thing, which was a huge thing because, it's cardio, you breathe
Yeah.
hard. The mask made it complicated, but we got through it.
Yeah, and I feel like that in itself speaks to just the transitions
Mhm.
of dealing with transitions and working through transitions,
Yeah.
working through the unfamiliar.
Hmm.
I think that they, as a community, is often discussing like working in the what feels unfamiliar, whether that be
Absolutely.
the different groups that they work with or the nonprofits, our different partners.
Hmm.
And so I think that it is can be looked at as inspiring to say like, oh, I was able to do a whole spin class with a mask on, which
Yeah.
seems until you do it, I don't think you know how hard it is.
Yeah, the first time I ran a playlist on the bike with the mask, I was just like, okay, you need to adjust, because you need more you just need more recovery, which I wasn't
Mm.
used to. Like, and I also had like made a playlist for that in a really long time. I was The last class I taught was I think March 10th of
Okay.
2020. And then it was like the end of April 2021 before I was back on the instructor podium.
Wow.
So it's a long time to not, so that was like a different skill set that I needed to figure out again, and it needed to
Yeah.
change, as things do with time and circumstances.
Yeah. Yes, very true. And what I was gonna mention about though at the start of the call we meant I had asked about like the difference between spin and yoga and getting into that, but also I think that that just speaks to the many branches that exist within the yoga
Yeah.
community. Like this was something that I had spoken with Alexandria,
Mhm.
also a facilitator for the upcoming Thay training happening this
Mhm.
weekend, is that there are so many branches to the yoga community, and it's if even if you don't necessarily start there, or if you do start there as in your case, there's other branches that you can kind of latch on to and grow from and
Oh,
learn from, because even the idea of you learned that recovery time was more you need more recovery time when you're biking with a mass. I
yeah.
imagine that that mindset has also played into your yoga practice as well.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I approach spin and yoga kind of like I just approach all of my stuff in the same way with sort of a similar mindset. It's just a very different type of class. Obviously, in a spin class, the music's going to be a lot more upbeat. It's a party. We're having a good time. Not that we're not doing that in yoga necessarily, but it is just a different headspace to be in. But I do feel like I approach everything similarly. And I think something we'll probably talk about is languaging. And
Mm.
a lot of what I took from the 3.5, from, I'm just going to say Faye because it's easier,
Yeah.
from the Faye training, the trauma informed yoga teacher training, it applies absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
And there were things that the thing I'm most conscious of is like I used to be like, hey guys. And even though like
Mm.
that is like socially just like an all-encompassing, it's not a gender specific thing really, but I am really careful now, not to say that. I like to say friends
Right.
instead. Hey friends, or just like the name of like the location where I am, like, all right, 83rd Street, let's go. But
I
even
love that.
something as simple as that was really, I think, beneficial to kind of take out into the world. Even like outside of a teaching environment, I think it's a
Hmm.
helpful tool to use in a world that's constantly changing.
Yeah. And that was a question that I was going to ask you is what drew you to the Thay training? Was it like feeling like you wanted to make adjustments in your spin journey or just in your own yoga practice?
No, it was very necessary for my yoga, like specifically for yoga teaching. So
Okay.
I was recently on Lara's podcast, Beyond Trauma,
Love.
talking about the yoga teacher training that I did, which was a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think my experience is uncommon. I
Mm.
think um, I think that for something that is supposed to, like be so helpful to people, there are certain schools of yoga and there are studios of yoga that are aggressive, and they utilize tactics like trauma bonding and even like cult like tactics where they just like wear you down. There's a lot, at least in the one I did, like there was a lot of forced journaling and sharing. So I talked a lot about it on Lara's podcast. So I don't know how deep we want to delve into it here. But I was really seeking out something to sort of help me recover from that. Like I knew that the style wasn't working for me anymore. I had basically learned like script. Um, there was a lot of like nonsense methodology.
Like
And
script writing, like writing in script.
no, like there was like a like a sequence that you just memorize. It's like and a lot of the methodology, a lot of the things you say or you're supposed to say are just it's like being handed a thing and being like a script for like a play or TV show or something, and say, read this, memorize it, repeat it back. So that's what I mean by that. So I was looking to, I mean, really just figure out what kind of teacher I wanted to be and how I wanted to teach. And I felt like I really needed some support coming out of that experience, which had been, it was 6 years from my initial teacher training to the Fay training. And, obviously COVID happened in there. So, we keep talking about things changing. So things really did change. And I thought there was also a nice opportunity for me to change in there as well. And because the first training was a little traumatic, I'm really careful about where I train now. I do a lot of research. And it's really it's hard because you're trusting these facilitators with something that's like so precious to you. And I was just really careful about where I decided to, like where you want to put in your time, your effort, your money. And Faye checked all the boxes. It was virtual, which was great. I did say with I think for your initial like 200 hour, it is important to do that in person because there's so much nuance to learning. Like you have to see people breathe, you have to see them move, you have to understand how to cue.
Agreed.
But for an add-on thing like the Fay trauma informed teacher training, like it works beautifully virtually. And it did make it accessible to me because at the time I don't think I would have been comfortable like in a big group setting. And it was accessible to everyone. There was somebody in my cohort who was in France during that training, so it really made it, I think having it be a virtual thing as an add-on to your 200 hour or 300 hour, whatever you're doing, made it really accessible, and I was able to do it.
So the first thing I'll ask you is, what episode was it of Lara's podcast for anyone listening that wants to go back?
It was a few episodes ago. I want to say it was like 45.
Okay.
But you'll know it because it has my name on it, which is Michelle Lehrman.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Just in case anyone wants the added motivation to register for Faye's class, that's happening, starts this Friday. Which is so surreal. Time is moving and grooving.
January went by very quickly, I think.
It did, and yet felt very long at the same time.
January's like that.
Yes. But I think it's a great way to kick off the year. And I think that as someone who did my 200 in person and then Faye's training was my first virtual training, I agree with the accessibility of just it not being, it's a short amount of time, it's one weekend, and it's 3 days. And then there's some add-on content as well. But so just location accessibility, but then also those cross-cultural like understandings that come with yoga that I think
Absolutely.
unless you have had that experience, whether in person and you had somebody from a different country or background attending your class, you don't realize how different the yoga experience is when you add in culture.
Oh, absolutely. And there were a few things that were so great about the Fey training. The first one I'll say, if you're on the fence about it, something Lara did that I appreciated so much was that we had like the timing of it was exactly what she said it was going to be. Like if
Mm.
you're going to have a break in an hour, we had the break in an hour. So it wasn't like nothing got pushed off. And that was just something I really, really appreciated because it's helpful to be able to plan like, okay, I'm going to be able to grab a snack here, I can take the dog out here. That was really helpful. And then there were things like I said, with the languaging that we went over, things like that you take that I should speak from that I took back out with me, but also like some of the cultural understanding about different cultures and working with minorities, were things that just nobody had ever covered, because I don't think there weren't really I don't think there were any people of color in my yoga teacher training.
Mm.
I was taught
Common.
by two white women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and some of the things that were addressed, especially with Jamie, I think it was, who came
Mm-hmm.
on and did that aspect of the Fae training, were just things that I had not even thought about and considered. Like there are deeper traumas that are cultural, and also like it's all different. I'm a Jewish person, and there's certainly things about like just I feel like everybody's culture has something,
Yes.
and that
At
wasn't
any
even
given time.
something it wasn't something that ever got discussed or considered in my initial training. And um just the fact that it was brought up and then discussed in like a cohesive, like comprehensive way. I also didn't feel like I was being liked, like that part of the training wasn't like a condescending thing. It was very conversational, because I think sometimes when you get into those types of things, it can feel like you're being told, this is how it is, this is what you need to do. And the conversational aspect of it was really beautiful. And it made it was very easy to understand. Like the way
Yeah.
that it was presented was very digestible. Um, and Jamie did like such a beautiful job of covering things in a way that didn't make me like feel bad. Just like it was like, no, just truly nobody has told me these things before.
Yeah. And I appreciate you shouting Janae out. I did an IG live with
Jamaine,
her
I'm
last
sorry.
year. It's
Yeah.
okay. An IG live with her last year where she shared just her work in Concord, her hometown, and how the impact of sharing learned experiences either within your community or outside of your community, and how anyone can stand to benefit. It doesn't necessarily have to just be about what your race or your ethnicity is,
Mhm.
but also just where you grew up and what learning
Absolutely.
environment you're in. And I definitely don't want to take away from people tuning into Laura's podcast, to hear just about the specific differences that you experienced in your previous trainings. But I think that what I do want to call out is the importance of self-reflection, of understanding where you want your yoga journey to go to. So I would love if you can speak to a bit on how you got to that point of having that conversation with yourself, because I think you attended a certification because you like yoga, and
Yeah.
then it's like, well, how do I grow from there?
Well, I had done that certification because I liked yoga, and like I was very involved with that studio at the
Okay.
time. It took it took a while to understand that like I didn't like it that much, and it was just very toxic
Mm,
environment, I would say. Um, there were a few things that happened that sort of got me wondering, like, okay, what do I do now? I knew I needed more education
mm,
because I there were things I just did not learn that I feel any yoga teacher should know. Because in place of that useful stuff was just methodology that was specific to that style of yoga.
mm-hmm,
Um, so there were a few things that happened. I had sort of just like stopped going because it just got to the point where I was like, this doesn't feel good anymore. I'm not doing this. Um, and that was before COVID, but then COVID happened, and I just like there were a lot of things going on social media
mm,
that I didn't like, that studio was posting, specifically about like being annoyed that studios were still closed, and like the owner of the studio posted something that was just sort of icky.
mm,
Meanwhile, I'm like, people are still dying. Like,
yeah,
this is still a problem. This, I understand that your small business is suffering, but um, you have to be sensitive that there are people in your community who have lost people.
mm-hmm,
I lost one of my grandmothers in early COVID, nursing
mm,
home. It just, um, so that was really negative. And around that time, I found out that there's like a support group on Facebook for people who are formerly like associated with this style, with like this school of yoga.
oh,
So I got
interesting.
connected, right, to
Mm-hmm,
other people because I had also felt very like alone in that. I'm like, is it just
mm-hmm,
me? Like, what is wrong? I don't understand, um, like why I'm having these feelings and why I don't feel good here. Um, and it turned out like I was very much not alone. Nobody ever is really.
no.
Um, and so finding like that group of people, some of who I knew, some of who had been at that studio,
Mm-hmm,
and some who I had been to trainings with, um, were just helpful in helping me kind of like, realize what had happened, and like no, your feelings are very valid and you didn't enjoy your time, and that's okay, and we're here for you. So all of these things were happening, and like as I'm thinking like I really need more education, and I found Faye on like just a Google search, and like I said, I was really doing a lot of research, before I would commit to anything.
yeah,
um, and just the timing of everything, like when that training was like a perfect time. I was really, we were like kind of just back at, we'd been back at Crunch, but I was just realizing like I don't actually know how to teach the way I want to teach,
yeah,
because I didn't get that education.
yeah. And I
Sorry,
think
it's a
that
convoluted way of getting to all
no,
of that.
no, and I appreciate the information that you have shared in our 15 minutes together, and I'm
Mhm.
so sorry that to the fake community of like having to cut it
It's okay.
short. But Michelle, thank you so much
Yeah, of
for
course.
this information. I think that your conversation for me is a push. I hope for the individuals attending to say,
Mhm.
hey, I was on the fence, but like these kind of nuances are something that I'm experiencing either with my current community or I'm looking
Yeah.
to expand my community, whether that's from diversity,
Mhm.
diversity of thought. So I just want to say thank you so much, Michelle. I hope that
Thank you.
we can continue this conversation again,
Absolutely.
to talk about the connections between yoga and other physical activities. But yeah, this was an awesome conversation, and I really appreciate the time that we did have together today.
Me as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a great
Bye.
day. Bye.